Hey, welcome to the Renewed Husband podcast where iron sharpens iron and men make men. We are here today talking about your brain on pornography. I'm going to read you a quick Bible verse here. 1 Corinthians 6:18. Flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body. You know, whenever it talks about sexual immorality, it's talking about anything that's outside of the marriage bounds, meaning sex with your wife. Okay? You ever wonder why that verse is like that? Why sexual immorality is the only sin that is committed against a person's own body? I kind of hinted on it last episode. The reason being that whenever you ejaculate, whenever you get off, your brain essentially releases a lot of chemicals, okay? Enkephalins and endorphins, and they make you feel good, okay? That's the after feeling of sex. It's different for men than it is for women. It's actually more intense for men, and that's why men are more likely than women to get addicted to porn. They're more likely to commit adultery. It is because it's a bigger hit for men, okay? If you think about it like a drug, cocaine, crack, heroin, whatever, they get the high, okay? There's a high after sex. It's the same thing. Here's where this sexual sin will get you and why it is committed against the body, okay? You need to think about your brain like a highway and there's little roads going everywhere, okay? You get off. Your brain gets that hit and it's like, man, I really like that. I want that again and I want that again. And so you keep doing that. You're watching porn, you're masturbating, you're getting off. That road is having a lot more traffic. Your brain wants a lot more traffic on it. It makes that road bigger. Okay? Think about it like that. And essentially that's what it is. So your brain, okay, I got this huge road. I want this road. I want all these good feelings. I want more. And that's how it keeps you going. It keeps you going. It keeps you going. Okay? So that is how the brain works. It makes that road bigger. It wants more chemicals going through, and so it gets you to watch porn every night, twice a day, whatever it is. Okay, and so that's how your brain works on pornography. It makes the release of that chemical better. It wants more of it, and it wants you to give it more of it. That's why people go back. That's why guys who try and stop for weeks, pretty much that's why they end up going back. There's a little bit more to it than that, but that's why they go back, because your brain wants that hit. It wants that hit, okay? Now, it has a little bit more in-depth things going on too. It's not just those chemicals that people see, and that's the only reason why it's hurtful to you, and it does a little bit more to your brain. So they've done brain scans about people who watch porn on a regular basis, habitual users of porn, and people that don't. Okay? And what they've looked at is different areas of the brain. Whenever you see something that should bring you a certain emotion, the difference is in the chemical release. Okay? Whenever you have an emotion, there's a chemical release. You have joy, there's a release. You have sadness, there's a release. You have pain, there's a release. You get off, there's a release. Okay? So they can measure that through brain scans. And what they have found out is that for people who habitually watch P, that what should bring you joy does not bring you as much joy. So let's say like you look at a video of a puppy running through a field. That should bring people joy. You look at a newborn baby, playing, smiling. That should bring people joy. Whenever they see it on the brain of someone who is habitually using P, it's not the same. It doesn't show up the same. That's interesting. You know why? Because it shows that in their everyday life, with their wife, with their kids, with their whoever, going out and having fun, they can't experience it the same as everyone else does. A joyful experience with your wife whenever you're on P is not the same as a joyful experience whenever you're not on P. Okay? That's what people don't realize, is that it affects you in little ways that people don't see, they don't realize, they don't feel. until they've already been watching P for a decade, and your wife's like, why don't you have feelings? Why don't you empathize with me? Why don't you feel sad when I feel sad? And it's like, with me and my wife, like every guy does. I've had a hard time crying, okay? And there's that thing of, men don't cry. Men cry, okay? Real men cry. Like my papa has cancer. That's something that should make me cry sometimes whenever I go see him. I don't know if it's going to be the last time I see him. I have a hard time with that, okay? So that's what P can do to your brain. It makes it so that essentially other emotions are dumbed down except for that emotion of getting off, okay? That's what P can do to your brain. Now, a hit that you can't empathize with people, that becomes a really hard problem whenever you get married and you have a wife and she wants you to feel connected to her emotionally, and you can't do that. Or you can't do that as well. Okay? Because your ability to empathize has been stunted by your use of P. Now, it could be something else, but the therapists and doctors that have studied this have shown that people who are not using P don't really have this issue. Only ones who are using P. Okay? Now, something else that they've found in these studies, and that over decades of studying this thing, my mentor is a guy who's been doing this for 30 years, helping guys get out of it. Okay? He's dealt with tens of thousands of cases of this, and one thing that he's also realized in talking to guys, and that other therapists have realized, is that a person on P, and whether it's a guy or a gal, okay, women can get on P and it become habitual users too. It's just far more rare. So if you are female, sorry, I'm just going to use he a lot more often, because 90% of the time it's a guy. Okay, now whenever you see the thing that you connect to that drug, let's say, okay, you end up objectifying it. What I mean by that is, you're going down the road, you see a woman that's no longer a woman to you, okay? That is a tool. Okay? It's no longer a woman. You don't see, the weight she's carrying. You don't see the kids with her. You don't see, that she's married. You don't see, anything going on in her life anymore. Like, as a Christian man, I see someone, I see a woman that I should be thinking I need to pray for her, because I can tell she has a lot going on. Okay? It's not what you see anymore whenever you're on P. Whenever you're a habitual user of P. It's not what you see. You objectify that woman. Okay? And that's not what God likes. That's God's daughter. We're God's son. We're objectifying His daughter. God sees everything that she's going through, and we're objectifying her, and He's like, dude, that's not what you're there to do. You're there to pray for that woman. Okay? You're there to help her. You're not there to objectify her. And my mentor, he uses a story essentially, and it's, you go out to a restaurant with your wife and this guy's checking her out, and you're like, that's kind of weird. He's like, now imagine if that was your daughter. Imagine if that guy was checking out your daughter. Someone's going to die, I mean, that's how it is. But what about you? And so the brain on P just kicks in that sense to objectify what you consume, okay? And on P, you're consuming people. All right? Now, one thing that's interesting, and this is still kind of hitting on that, this is why it's a sin against your body, is whenever you ejaculate, whenever you get off, whatever you are looking at, whatever you are beholding, whenever you get off, that image, that snapshot, your brain keeps. It's kind of interesting. That's why people can remember, things they've seen from a decade or decades or a long time ago, for the older guys out there, is because your brain gets off, it has that chemical rush, and it takes a snapshot, and it's just like, man, that was good. I'm going to keep that. And that's what happens. Now, it makes some interesting stories. My mentor, for example, had a guy that, long story short, he ended up having to masturbate outside. And instead of looking out or looking up, he looked down at his boots. And that's what he did every time he masturbated. Now, that caused a really interesting thing for him, because he ended up couldn't have sex without his boots on, and had a collection of boots that would make any woman jealous of how many shoes he had. Okay? So it can cause some interesting things. Now, also what it can do, and this is for any man that is not yet married, but also a problem for men that are married, it can mess up your sex life. Now, let's understand a small reason why is because of what I just said. You're getting that hit, you're getting that picture retained, and some guys have types, some guys have things they watch, whatever. Well, here is a big problem, is you watch things on there, and now you're not married to that. That can be a big problem in a man and wife's sexual life. Now, here's just an interesting story. There's this guy, he comes in and his wife is like, we can't have sex. Okay, what's going on? Well, after a long conversation, find out the guy has been essentially masturbating to one-legged women. Don't know why. He just decided to scribble out one leg one day, and after that, that's what he kept masturbating to. Well, his wife has two legs, and he won't have sex with her. So, that is what pee can do to a brain. That is why it is a sin against your own body, because it changes the chemical makeup of your brain, the physical makeup of your brain, the psychological makeup of your brain, and then you and your wife and your kids have to live with that. Okay? So, keynote here, if you're in a discovery day, if your wife is trying to figure out what you watched or anything like that, if she's trying to get specifics of what everything was, don't tell her. It is far better for her to not know than to know. If she has any questions about that, she can email info@renewed-marriage.com. Or she can go on my wife's podcast or connect with her and she can find out why. Okay? And that's at Renewed Wife. Alright? Now, let's see. Yeah. I mean, that's it, guys. So, pee can have a lot of negative effects on your brain. It can do a lot to it. I highly recommend that you get with someone, that you talk to someone, a support group. Be careful about your support group. Some of them go into a little bit of graphic detail. Don't want to get into that. You essentially need to find a support group that is also there to keep you accountable, to give you steps of how to get better. Not just one where it's like, hey, my name is, Canyon. This is what I'm going through. No, you need one that's like, this is what you need to do. All right. Again, I have a call every other day. You can find it at renewed-marriage.com. Okay, we have some other stuff on there. You can check it out. And yeah, guys, that's all for today. See you next time.